Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the professor, and this is the moment of truth.
Some Michigan Arabs and Muslims have launched a campaign, and they're saying abandon Biden, and they're urging members of their community to show up to the polls but not cast their vote for Biden. These efforts are also happening in other key states. This is, as I'm sure you know, going to be a very close election likely. Do you agree with this strategy, abandon Biden?
You know, for me, that question has to be put back to the candidate, to President Biden. You know, it's on the candidate. It's his responsibility to earn the trust and respect of the voters. I've run for office before. I've never pointed at the voters of my district and said, you're at fault if I'm not elected. In fact, it's me as the candidate. It's President Biden as the candidate to put forward a policy platform that is receptive to all of Americans. What we're asking for, a ceasefire, is not something that only the majority of Arab Americans and Muslim Americans support. In fact, over 60% of Americans support a ceasefire, over 80% of Democrats. And so for me, I would urge President Biden to heed the calls of Americans from coast to coast.
People are wondering about, realistically, what is the alternative and what does that alternative mean?
Absolutely. I think Trump is a threat to American democracy. So the question should stand. What will President Biden do to prevent the unraveling of our American democracy? Why is being aligned with Benjamin Netanyahu and the most right-wing government in Israel's history worth potentially sacrificing our American democracy? You know, I had a resident that came before a city council meeting who had lost over 80 family members in Gaza. And the question in everybody's mind is, while we send our condolences for your loved ones, we want to know how you're going to vote come November. And I think that's extremely dehumanizing to think of Palestinian lives only in the context of polls. Arab American lives and Muslim American lives outside of the context of just polls.
Saba, you said reproductive rights are a huge factor for you, but that you probably won't vote for President Biden.
I think it would be hypocritical of me to use reproductive rights as a way to justify voting for Biden when Biden is aiding and sending military aid to Israel, which is airstriking Gaza and blocking humanitarian aid, leading to women there who are pregnant, either getting C-sections without anesthesia, not being able to be provided with prenatal care.
It's interesting that, just to button this up, you are not very excited about the Democratic candidate. But I saw the both of you are excited, but I saw the both of you jump when we talked about reproductive access. That is something that's going to make you show up to vote, even though you're kind of on the candidate?
I think so. I mean, I'm certainly a frustrated Democrat.
Now you just heard that, didn't you? You have two young Arab Americans, one of them being a politician, the other one not, and yet both of them are saying the exact same thing. You got the white media who's trying to pull this game of, well, Joe Biden, you got to vote for him, otherwise Trump will win. You're going to put Trump back in the White House. What was the first thing that mayor said? He said, no, Biden's going to put him back in the White House. We should be asking Biden, why is it that American democracy hangs in the balance? It's in there by a razor's edge, and yet you're more concerned about taking care of Benjamin Netanyahu and shoring up his political position than you are with saving American democracy. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. See, I've been talking about this for the longest time. This guy, he just showed up and said it, but I've been saying this for the longest time. Now that you have a non-black person who's saying it, those of you who get a little bit timid, your knees start knocking whenever people talk the way that I'm talking, hopefully now that a non-black person has done it, maybe you'll feel a little bit more confident about it. See, that's what other groups do. You try to sit there and blame them and decide to make them the bad guy. They say, no, Joe Biden's the reason that he's going to lose the White House. If American democracy does fall, it's because of Joe Biden. He needs to prioritize this if he wants to hold on to American democracy, because he's the one who's put it in peril. He's the one who's decided to prioritize something else. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. And you had Abby Phillips here. You can tell the folks at CNN, they've told her, you better make sure you take it to this guy. And she's doing her part to keep her job. She don't want to wind up like Tiffany Cross and the rest of them. She don't want to wind up to be the next cable Negro who's in the unemployment line. But it's significant because you having this mayor of Dearborn, an immigrant, and a non-black immigrant at that, who this good Democratic Party and America in general have bent over backwards to provide all sorts of opportunities to, and yet here he is saying for folks on the other side of the planet, hey, if you're doing wrong by them, don't expect my vote. And if American democracy hangs in the balance, well, hell, if you're going to be mistreating us, then let American democracy fall. See, for these other constituencies, when there's something that they're demanding, they don't sit there trying to make excuses to vote for the lesser of two evils. They've got their issue, and that's that. Sure, you got the one young lady talking about, well, I've never been a one-issue voter before, but all of a sudden she's a one-issue voter on this. So what does that tell you? What it tells you is that up until now, the one issue that mattered the most to her was never on the ballot. It was never in question. It was never in jeopardy. She's always been a one-issue voter. It's just that up until this point, her one issue has never been imperiled. But now that it is, all of a sudden she's showing that abortion thing don't mean jack to me. By the way, when you heard that young woman, that young Arab woman say, it's the exact same thing that these white suburban women are like. And the Democrats are getting all happy about, oh, we held some statewide referendums about abortion, and these white women actually supported it. Yeah, that's because they were supporting one issue in isolation. They don't have a problem voting for one Democrat issue in isolation, as opposed to voting for an entire slate of Democratic Party policies, which is what happens when you vote for a Democratic politician. All that proves is, as long as there's not a Democratic politician on the ballot, you can win with issues, but not with politicians. That's what it means. And that's how you got these white suburbanite women who will go ahead and play along and they'll vote for the Democrat issue on abortion. But when it comes time to vote in the election, they're going to be going for Trump. Democrats haven't figured it out yet, or at least they're desperately trying not to figure it out. There is a world of difference between a certain segment of voters, white suburbanites in this case, white suburban women, who are choosing to vote for one specific particular issue, which, by the way, has overlap for their community. All these white suburban women, they're still women nonetheless. They get pregnant like any other female does. There's a big difference between them voting for abortion to be legal so they can get it, and then, oh, we're going to vote for all this other stuff that the Democrats are doing too. That's what actually happened. And sure, she's a woman, and abortion matters to her, but not as much as the survival of her own people. That matters more. See what happened there? See, with the black community, they come to us and it's all about abortion, this, that, and they always make sure they got some bootlicking Negroes who don't say otherwise. You would never have a mayor, a black mayor in particular, all of these clowns looking to climb the political ladder. They're not going to be sitting there saying, you know what, Joe Biden's the reason American democracy is going to fall if it does at all. He needs to go ahead and bend to the will of the backbone of the Democratic Party. We are the base of the party, and that being the case, he is not legitimate if he does not do what the base demands. The mayor of Dearborn laid it out in no uncertain terms. Biden is making it a point to rebel against what he knows is the clear consensus, not merely of Democrats in general, but of the American people. And that being the case, why is Biden willing to risk all of that? Why is he willing to give Trump just an easy road back to the White House, all to protect some clown on the other side of the world? And he was not equivocal about that. You see, that's what happens when you got a group who's actually making demands. As black folks, we're going to have to make sure we start making it a point to remove these sniveling, boot-licking scumbags. That's supposed to be some black representation saying, hey, reparations is the issue. Our tangibles are the issue. And if you're sitting here in front of us disrespecting us in any way, that's the issue. The era of black people voting for free, that's done. And the era of everybody's going to be benefiting except for black people, that's done. And the era of, well, if black people get something, we got to make sure we take care of everybody else. When Native Americans were getting all of these handouts and such from the government, nobody said, what about black people? Japanese Americans got their reparations. Nobody said, what about black people? You have Jews in America. There are Holocaust museums in the United States, but the Holocaust happened in Europe. Nobody's saying, well, we got to make sure that these people understand. Nobody plays the games of, oh, didn't the Holocaust happen 75 years ago? How many times are we going to be rehashing that? Nope. This is the history of the people who are here, and that being the case, even if it didn't happen in the United States, we still got to recognize it anyway. But black people are saying, here's what we're owed. All of a sudden, ain't no money, don't know where it's coming from, you shouldn't be asking anyway. These Muslims are fed up with this. And it didn't take them 2 or 3 election cycles to figure it out either. They got it the first time at bat. See, it reminds me of what Paul Mooney used to say. Black folks, too many of us are just slow on the uptake, too slow to figure out these things, too slow to react when action is called for. And they weren't sitting there saying, oh, Trump is just too dangerous to be led in the White House. He's too dangerous. They said the opposite. He acknowledged, that mayor of Dearborn acknowledged, yes, Donald Trump is dangerous, but we've weathered 4 years of Donald Trump, and we can weather 4 more if we have to. See how different that is? That's the mentality of somebody who understands political warfare. This is not somebody who's trying to figure out, how do I compromise just so I can get a deal, period. A bad deal is better than no deal at all. No, they said the opposite. They said no deal is better than a bad one. So that's what they want. They want a good deal. And if they can't get a good deal, better not to have one at all. That's exactly what black people are supposed to be doing. So now you got these non-black folks who are sitting here on an issue that is of far less importance than our reparations. And yet they're prepared to go to the mat for it. And they're talking the way that we have been saying people who are actually interested in power are supposed to be talking. They're not trying to find a way to compromise on it. This is what it is. Now, to be openly honest about it, every single Arab American in America could stay home on election day, and it would not turn the outcome of even one election, certainly not in Michigan. So that's part of what the white media is doing. They believe in taking both sides of the conversation. Sure, they're talking about this issue with Arab Americans, but the truth of the matter is they're not the ones who are going to decide the election. They didn't decide in 2016, didn't decide in 2020. Black people do. And for the folks who didn't watch the entire Face the Nation clip, you probably saw that black person who was in the background there. He's an immigrant, just so you know. That's part of the reason why I didn't play any of his comments. He's an immigrant, so you can pretty much guess where he's coming from. But my point is, this is exactly what black people are supposed to be doing. It's what we're also supposed to be demanding from the political misleadership class. And anybody who doesn't want to do that does not need to be in office. We got to take a hard-nosed approach. See, one of the advantages that the Arab Americans have is that there happens to be uniformity of thought and purpose between those in the political class and the Arab on the street. That's the advantage that they've got. We are going to have to make it a point to start elbowing our ways into these corners. Make sure that these corrupt and crumbling bootlicks are put on notice. Black folks need to make it a point that these guys are going to be confronted. There's a lot of people who feel the exact same way that you do. But the problem is, let's be bluntly honest, too many people are waiting, sitting back, waiting to see if somebody else is going to cross that line, step across it first. That's what a lot of black folks are doing. They're waiting to see is somebody else going to say it first. And then we'll go ahead and get behind them. Maybe. That ain't good enough. The election that's coming up, you got all these other constituencies who are making it clear they're going to weaponize their vote for their own benefit. But you're going to put Trump back in office? No, Biden's going to put Trump back in office. And if you don't want Trump back, you got to do what we say. If that's what the Arabs are saying, black folks need to be saying it 5 times as loudly. But the point of this morning's briefing is simply to illustrate this is what these non-black constituencies are doing. When there's something that's important to them, they'll sit there and say, I've never been in my entire life a one-issue voter, but I am today. I am an issue now. One issue is all it takes. And then they'll be saying, I support the Democrats wholeheartedly except for this. We'll stay home on election day. That's how you show people that you are serious about your interest. But make no mistake, we're not going to let the white media sit here and craft this narrative that, Joe Biden, he's in the toilet as far as the polls go. Well, he's going to lose, and when he does, that's because of the Arabs in Israel. See, they can play on that issue. That's one that does not threaten white supremacy, so they can go ahead and give some airtime to the mayor of Dearborn or to this Arab American college student chick. They can go ahead and do that because it doesn't threaten white supremacy. Our tangibles, our empowerment does. So far as they're concerned, we ain't talking about that at all. It's safe for them to go ahead and give minor lip service to the plight of the Palestinians because when those Palestinians immigrate to the United States, like the mayor of Dearborn and that college student, a lot of them get on board with team white supremacy. They get on board with the dominant society, usually against black Americans. So as far as they're concerned, the racial hierarchy is going to be maintained. So it's okay, as long as you ain't giving too much airtime to it. We're not trying to legitimize it, but it's okay for us to go ahead and mention that. See, that's a safe one to put on. You don't hear them talking about black people's tangibles at all. When they talk to us, they make sure, we're going to go ahead and just say that black people are okay with abortion and transgender bathrooms and immigration. Immigration is very important to black people. They want the doors wide open. That's what they do with black people. They don't dare talk to us. They're terrified of doing so. Well, it falls to us to make sure that our issues are front and center. But you can't do that being scared. And you can't do that making excuses for going along with the get-along. I've been saying this for the longest time, that we don't need to be concerned about whether or not the Democrats hold office or not. If they lose office, that'll be a good thing. It'll teach them a lesson. Other people understand this principle. We got it first, but other people are the ones who exercise it. That's the reason why we keep falling behind. We know what's supposed to be done, but we keep making excuses for doing otherwise. All right, so now that you've seen other folks, another constituency who happens to see their interests being threatened, and they've taken the stance boldly of, to hell with this, we ain't voting for you for any reason, now that you've seen them take the hard line, now you understand why it is that we've been saying it for so long. This is exactly what black people are supposed to be doing. We already know what the playbook is. You start using it, you're going to be getting results. But if you start making excuses for it, and you start letting the white media get you to give in to fear talk, the big bad Trump is coming back. What the hell is Trump going to do that Biden hasn't already been doing? That's what that mayor's point was. And no, you're not going to be blaming them for anything. I say the opposite. For black folks, we should be saying the exact opposite. Yes, we were the ones who decided that American democracy was not worth preserving, because if we're not comfortable, ain't nobody going to be comfortable. If we are ignored, then everyone's going to be ignored. If our interests are not being adhered to and not being fulfilled, then everybody else is going to do without as well. That's what it's supposed to be. That's how you show people that they're supposed to be prioritizing you. You got to be bold about it. It's making people unhappy? Good. Because when people are unhappy or offended by something, that means they're paying attention to it. And the only way that we're going to stop offending you and stop making you uncomfortable is you got to do right by us. If you don't have anything to vote for, then what the hell are you doing voting? Truth be told, everybody's a one-issue voter. They don't like to say that because as far as they're concerned, they in many cases don't actually know what their interests are, so it's kind of hard for them to narrow down what it is the most important issue is for them. But also a lot of them like to think to themselves that by saying that they're not one-issue voters, what they're saying is, I have broad horizons, and that because I'm a very deep thinker. You can't possibly boil down the complexity of what it is to one thing. No. You go ahead and you put people's backs to the wall, you threaten what is important to them, and they'll show you exactly what the one issue is that they care about most of all. And they won't be talking any nonsense about, well, I don't want to seem shallow or anything. Well, that's kind of limited thinking to do the one-issue voter thing. No, they'll be loud and proud about it. Yeah, I'm a one-issue voter. Because when you do that, what you're doing is you're showing people your line in the sand. You're showing them exactly the line that they better not cross. It's been a long time since black people have been talking like that. And we are way overdue for a righteous resurgence of drawing the line. We got to make sure that everybody understands that black people are single-issue voters, and our issue is power. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Kimba Shakur, Mark Anderson, Marvin Woods, Sandra Threadcraft, and Kenneth Prescia. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.